you do? Oh, God, what did you do?
Good evening and welcome to the City of Reading, Ohio Council meeting for June 1st, 2021. Please join me in a prayer in our pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the council member roll call, please?
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Gertz?
Here.
Mr. Lynn?
Here.
Mr. Albrecht?
Here.
Mr. Lindeman?
Here.
Mr. Fischescher?
Here.
Mrs. Edichico?
Here.
All present, all council members present. Approval of minutes. Unless there's any objection, the minutes for the council meeting on May, excuse me, on May 6th, the special legislation are approved as distributed. Those minutes are approved. Unless there's any objection, the minutes for the council meeting on May 18th, a regular session, are approved as distributed. Those minutes are approved. I do not believe there's anyone asking, audience asking to participate. Can you confirm that for me, please, Keith?
Good to go.
Okay, then we'll go to reading of communications. I do believe there was one that we had from the audience. And if you'll go ahead and read that, Carla, that'd be timely.
This is from Don Likens. Council, please respond to my statement below. I am Don Likens and reside at 8415 Reading Road, Ohio 45215. I am a small business owner. I don't know who or when someone came up with the idea to serve Amberley Village with ambulance service or Arlington Heights with police, fire, and ambulance. But here is the downside. There are simply too many sirens going off in our community. Making revenue off these neighbors comes at a cost of peace for Reading residents. I think we should run out our existing contracts and cease these services as we don't need the sirens or traffic. If you are downgrading our city for the sake of others and at the expense of it says you are downgrading our city for the sake of others and at the expense of our residents. I am willing to pay more taxes to reduce the noise and sirens and traffic on our streets. I own property all over Reading, and you can hear the sirens 2 and 3 blocks away from the roads they traverse when heading to Amberley or Arlington Heights. I just happen to live on Reading Road also, so I hear it firsthand. Don Likens.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Fischescher if he would like to go ahead and add his discussion at this time so that we have them connected.
Okay.
Well, I probably should.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Mr. Gertz is right. Unless there's any objection, the communication will be marked received and filed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All disagree? Okay, then that'll be done. Mr. Fischescher, go ahead and respond with your written there.
Okay. First off, yes, our EMS, fire, and police services are busy. You know, later on in my report, I'll be giving the monthly response numbers, and all you have to do is listen to those to know how busy our departments are. Most of the police responses are not light and siren responses. So basically, we can take them out of the equation for the noisy responses. On average, our fire EMS make just about one run per day to the two mentioned contracted communities. Of those responses, the overwhelming majority of response routes are Clark Road to Arlington Heights and Benson Street to Amberley Village. Knowing that Mr. Likens resides near the intersection of Reading and Galbraith, I can assure him that this intersection is used extensively by other departments, including Cincinnati, Sycamore, and departments on the west that are heading to Jewish Hospital. Finally, yes, these contracts help keep the city's expenses for safety services in check. With pumper trucks costing somewhere close to $500,000 and life squads costing north of $200,000, it takes more than just a tax increase, as he suggests, but a decision on various means by which we can continue to be able to offer the excellent service to our citizens that our citizens have come to expect. So, you know, one of the downsides of emergency response is lights and sirens. You know, nobody likes to hear them. You know, I would suggest anybody that has a problem with that maybe should just stop and say a prayer for whoever they're responding to, and also for the people responding, to protect them. That's all I have, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Fishesher. I also talked to Chief Owens, and I believe that he had many of the same conclusions. Were you able to work your conclusions with Mr. Owens, Chief Owens?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I talked to Todd extensively.
Yeah, and Chief Owens works for the city and Patrick Ross, and so that information came from the administration. So I thank you for your response, Mr. Fishesher. I don't think there's any other communications.
I'd like to say something as well.
Okay,
Chris.
go ahead, Mr. Pop.
You know, I've sat and thought about this. I hadn't got a chance to speak to Todd about it yet, but after sitting and thinking about it, Arlington does not have a fire or EMS department. So if we are not supplying it, somebody else is going to. And if they're going to, they're likely to be going through our streets anyways. So that was another point I'd like to bring up.
Very good. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Good,
I'll just
Ms.
add
Nancy,
that living on Jefferson, it's very often that I'll see Lockland come through this way as well. And they also travel through Benson Street. So it's not only our departments that are, you know, with the lights and sirens, it's the surrounding communities as well.
Anyone else with a related comment? Then we will go ahead and continue. I mean, I don't think there's any other communications from the community. I will go to council committee reports. Finance, Chairman, Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did, as you're well aware, the last meeting sent out several questions to the Safety Service Director. And I appreciate, Carla, that they were put into the record, which I want both his responses and my further letter that I sent out today to be into the record. But I did finally, after, to be blunt, about 10 or 11 phone calls, the letter did work, and I had scheduled a meeting with him last Thursday to go over many of these things. But unfortunately, and I want to extend my sympathy to all of the Onlinger family. Steve Onlinger, a very young man in his early 50s, passed away with a beautiful, wonderful wife and family. And I didn't get to the visitation, but I did get to attend the funeral. And that's why I had to cancel my meeting with the Safety Service Director on Thursday. And it was a very solemn and impressive funeral. The Bishop of Covington even presided at the funeral, and the church was full, and could show he worked for St. Paul's Church over in Florence, and he's a great loss to their community, and he's a great loss to the metropolitan area of Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana, in my opinion. But as a result of attending the funeral, I couldn't meet with the safety service director. He did give me the written responses, and I sent out my thoughts about his responses. And as I mentioned just before, I'd like all of that into the record. I am still concerned. It's with some of these, and I'm not going to go through the whole litany of things tonight. I have other ones I want to deal with him, one specifically, and maybe economic development director should be brought in. It's about finances, where we stand with the TIF, the tax incentive financing for the future of the PNC property. I don't know what's going on with that. I know we were put in a position where the school might not have supported it, but I think they have now. So I think it's imperative to us to get that further answered as well. I do plan to have and try to have another meeting with the safety service director about these issues, but the one that currently is at the tip of my worries is this whole issue about the community development block grant money for the years of would be 2019 and 18. That money isn't spent within the next several months. My understanding is we're going to lose I think it was about $140,000. And by all means, I couldn't understand why we didn't know more about the fact that that Canning Park is in a flood zone. I mean, it's right adjacent to the Mill Creek. So it's fortunate that this is taking the steps that it has. And I would just want to go on record that rather than doing some kind of a, cosmetic improvement to the Johns and Canning Park, that money I think could be better spent if we just go ahead, if that's council's decision, which I think it was, to complete the whole paving of Benson Street rather than doing half of Benson Street and some cosmetic work in the park. My concern is, do we have to have another public meeting? And I hope that's being explored. I didn't hear any response to that. My view would be that since we're changing the choice of what we're going to do with the funds, that probably should come up as another issue that would be discussed in the public forum. So those are some of the things I would like to explore. I have some other issues that I want to cross paths with him. I do have, as I say, a hope of having a future meeting with him, and I hope to go over that in more detail with some of these other issues. I also wanted to get into some of the expenses that we're incurring. I did have a casual conversation with our.
Can I interrupt just a second? On the meeting that you will go ahead and pull together with Mr. Ross, would that be a committee meeting where both Mr. Lindeman and Mr. Fischescher would also be invited?
I don't care. Anybody can come to it. That's fine.
Well, they want to be invited. I think it's responsibility of the chair to have a meeting.
I'll let them know, but I don't sense that there's as many questions as I've had. And I did contact. It disturbs me as I can't even get in to respond on telephone calls. Maybe you have more contact ability than I do, Mr. Chairman, but I don't have any problem.
Well, I would think your committee would be the ones that you would solicit to maybe help you get more information from the administration.
Well, many of these questions have nothing to do with finance as well. They have to do with.
Then why are they so hot in your committee then?
Because I'm a councilman, I've been representing my ward, and I've been representing the city for probably more than 30 or 40 years. And just one of the issues that strikes me, I thought, which is not really finance, but we're building we're not building it, but we're authorizing the construction of a baseball diamond where the former Hilltop School used to be. And I'm informed that there are no restroom facilities at that new construction of that project. And I'm concerned that there's not going to be adequate restrooms for the. Well, let me finish. Can you let me finish my thought? Because it's not finance. You want to know why?
Okay. I don't want to go through 30 thoughts and then try to get back to the one. So can we have a little dialogue here? What I would like you to do then is to find out which committee you think that should be in, and then ask the committee chairperson to follow up on that. And I think what you're talking about is lands here. So that might be Mr. Lindeman and his committee.
I don't agree with you. I think as an not only as a councilman, I think as a citizen who pays taxes and who are going to have relatives that are going to participate in the programs down these ball games up there, as a citizen and as a taxpayer, I have a right to communicate with the safety service director and the powers to be to see why we don't have these kind of facilities put in for something as large as the investment of a.
And that's just,
I don't
just
think
fine.
that's not finance. I mean, I can talk to the safety service director.
Absolutely. But why do you bring it up in our council meetings?
Because
It
that's,
should be brought up by the person responsible for.
well, I don't happen to agree with you, Mr. President. I don't think if they want to go investigate it in their committee, Mr. Lindeman, that's his prerogative. I don't care what.
Every meeting I come up with new business. Every meeting I ask, is there any other topics that should be assigned to a committee that anyone has? And you've never said anything during that part of the meeting to help us get the right person who's got the chairman of that committee to follow up on your concerns.
Sir, I have a right to communicate with any member of the community.
That's not how we run council. That's not,
I
we don't have a dictatorship. We have 7 committees.
We don't have a dictatorship. That's why I think every citizen has a right to communicate directly with the safety service director about many issues. And I haven't had that luxury as maybe you do. I try to call him and communicate with him at least 8 to 10 times over the phone. I sent him emails. So this is one way I did get a response. But anyway,
Yeah, but if you put it in their committee, then it'll be up to the committee
Well, I
chairperson
don't
to
agree
be
with
able to
you.
talk with
I
him
agree
and
with
get
you.
the information back for you, just like they do for every other resident of the city.
I don't agree with you. I think the residents of the city, I've told my constituents, if they have a question with the police chief, make an appointment, go see the police chief. He's very approachable. He did a fine job yesterday at the memorial celebration in recognition of our lost service people. The fire chief does a great job. I have a question, I call the fire chief. If I have a question about today I did about building requirements, I had to find out whether beehives are permitted in the city of Reading. I called Dan Brooks. When I call the safety service director, I don't get many real response. So
Well,
anyway,
it looks like you may have gotten a good response from Mr. Ross. And I'd like you to build on that with having another meeting that got canceled
well, thank you
and
for
doing it personal, and then having others in your committee there, Mr. Fishesher, Mr. Lindeman, if they feel that it's not supposed to be in finance, they can help you get to the right administrative person or to the right committee to put that into.
Well, I want to thank you for your great advice, but I'm going to conduct myself in a manner that I feel appropriate, that I have done for many years, Mr. Chairman. So let me finish my report, if you will. I think before we get too far into the meeting, that we should return to the council chambers, and I hope to be more aggressive in trying to get that done after tonight. And one other thing I'd like to see, maybe that would be something for the Laws and Contracts Committee to explore. I was very impressed with the city of Lebanon, who are that organization, that council up there, and their governmental organization has passed legislation protecting the unborn. And I think they've actually declared themselves to be a sanctuary city for the unborn. I'm very right to life. I'm strong proponent of that. And I also would like to, I'm going to investigate it. I'll try to provide it to the committee, the legislation that they passed about elimination and prevention of abortions in their community. So I think that that's probably the extent of where I want to go tonight. And thank you very much, Mr. President, for your fine advice, but I think I'll conduct my affairs in a way that I see fit in the future. And if I want to talk to the safety service director, the chief of public works, or the building commissioner, or the fire chief, or the police chief, or some of the guys that I know that I represent that come out and pick up my trash or take whatever, I think I'll do it in the fashion that I feel most comfortable, Mr. President. Thank you.
I didn't say that you shouldn't do that. I just said that you could probably get more results by using the council the way it's supposed to be set up. Ms. Edichico, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just wanted to answer one of the questions real quick regarding the restrooms up at the baseball field. Now, I don't have all the information, but I do know that it's being done in 2 phases. They've been very open about discussing this. I sent the links earlier for the e-news that they send out each month, their board updates, and the community forums that the school has been having. So they have been sharing the information. They're not keeping anything from the community. Phase 1 is just the baseball fields and the stands. Phase 2 will involve restrooms and, I believe, concession stands. I'm not sure about a ticket booth. Again, not all the information, but I believe a lot of that will involve some fundraising on their end. And again, I've told you before that Mr. Hayes at the school has all the information about this project, as well as the I believe Alicia Bemis is on the Building and Grounds Committee. She could answer a lot of these questions for you as well. So you know, there's many different ways to get some of these answered.
And I feel that Ms. Edichico's response was probably better than anything you could have gotten from Mr. Ross at this point, because he's busy with his work and Ms. Edichico's doing her job. So,
Well, I appreciate your observation, but I don't necessarily agree. If we're going to pay $95,000 to the safety service director, his response in my notations that I had sent to him was that he really, one of them specifically was that he did say that there are no restrooms, but he didn't go into any detail that Mrs. Edichico went into. I also asked him what are the proposals for the use of the property that's was the old Central School property on Jefferson Avenue, Bonnell and Mechanic Street, and he said he doesn't have any idea. Well, if it's so public, why isn't the person who works full time for the city as a safety service director? I would behoove me to think that he would make contact with these people. You know, he's there every day. I'm supposed to be there every day. And the mayor said he's available 24/7 on his telephone to find out all the details of these issues. You know, I don't have any, I haven't had any direct communication with members of the school board. I will admit that. But I've asked other city personnel if they have any idea, and none of them seem to know what the school is going to do with the Central School property. I actually became aware of the lack of restrooms for the ball diamond up at Hilltop, where the former Hilltop School was, from another member of the administration, which was not part of the elected administration, one of the employees of the city. So I think it's kind of unusual that the person who is in charge of all of these particular departments doesn't have greater knowledge about what's happening with these particular areas of the city. That I think every citizens deserve to know what's happening. But thank you for your information.
but Mr. Fishesher, if you've got something, I'm going to get right back to you. Ms. Edichico, you can continue.
Just to answer another question regarding Central, I believe that Mr. Ross probably gave you all the information he has on that, because as of right now, the school does not know what they're doing with it, nor do they have any plans in the works. They, again, in their community forums and in their board meetings, have discussed the benefits of keeping the property versus selling the property. Who would they sell it to? What they do with it? There's no plans in the works right now. So Mr. Ross does not have any information to give on Central because there's no information to give.
Mr. Fishesher, did you have something?
Yeah, I know that 90% of the time or 80% of the time, Patrick's out in the main office taking care of business out there, meeting with citizens, helping them with the water bill, because basically if you face the facts, he's understaffed. So possibly the big solution to the whole problem would be to get Mr. Ross some help in that office, and then he could go out and be Mr. Gertz's secretary and get the answers he wants.
No, that's very sarcastic. I'm not asking to be my secretary, Randy. I'm asking him to direct information and the easy questions I'm asking, the job he should do. I don't want to pay a guy $95,000 to just take telephone calls and meet with people and residents. I think that's a waste of money. And I don't think they're understaffed. I mean, you and I can have a personal discussion, or I'll get more information. We can have it on this council floor. I don't care. But he's not my personal secretary. I don't need that kind of sarcasm.
Well, it's stuff that you could have gotten yourself. Why not go to the school? That's half the problem that we had the entire time with the building of the school. People were coming to council, and I'm not faulting them for that, but they didn't go to the school board. Why don't you go? If you've got questions, go to the school board and ask them.
Well, your recollection, to refresh your memory about why they came to council, because they were not meeting the requirements of taking care of flooding. They were not taking care of requirements that they had agreed with the PDD. There were other building questions that the safety service director, if you go back and look at the records, he wrote letters to them telling them they had to do certain things to accomplish what had, or even at one time, I think he threatened he wasn't going to give them a certificate of occupancy, if you recall. So citizens go to the source that I guess they feel they get the best response to. If they want to go to the school board, or I don't, that's not my prerogative. They can do whatever they want, but I do know they attended a lot of meetings requesting our assistance, and our not only our assistance, but our insistence that action be taken to see to it that the project was built correctly.
I can't help to notice, Mr. Gertz, that you might have something alternative to go after Mr. Ross. And you know, I'm not going to entertain that much longer in my meetings. If you want to put information out there, that's fine, but you can leave the numbers and things out of the meeting. There's no need for that.
Your job is to conduct the meeting. You don't own the meeting. And I think that it's a public forum that we've allowed citizens to come to the council chamber and express.
It's not really my meeting. It's not your meeting. It's all council. And if you want me to take a roll call to see if they want me to mute you or something, I'll do that.
You can do whatever you want, but I'll tell you this, it ain't your meeting, it ain't my meeting, it ain't council's meeting. This council, as far as I'm concerned, belongs to the citizens of Reading, and they have a right to go to the forum and or the group that they feel they get the best response from. And this isn't just from me what's coming up. I've had questions from my constituents and other citizens about all these questions that I've raised. I haven't, this isn't something I dream up. I've said this many times, Mr. Ross's grandfather and his grandmother are two of the finest people. Matter of fact, Phil Petronio was the finest man I've ever known in my life. I have great respect for him. His mother helped me and my wife when we had problems of illness. But I'll be darned if I'm going to sit around and not take my job serious. And I've done it for all the years I've been doing this. And if someone comes to me and they want to have an answer to a question, or I feel I want to get an answer to a question, I've never been shy. And you can do all you want to quiet me, but I'm not that kind of personality, Mr. President. Thank you.
Any more questions? Mr. Lindeman.
I could be mistaken, but I think Mr. Lynn and Mel Gertz had their hands up. I'm not sure.
Okay. Mr. Lynn?
I mean, I would make one statement. I mean, I've been a member of council for 10 years, and it does help when Patrick's at the meetings and during our time, we can ask him these questions, and that way the community knows the answer. The problem is he's not here to answer the questions. So I really don't have a problem with what Mr. Gertz did. He sent a list of questions, he answered it. Now he's relating that to the community. Normally that happens in our meetings. It has not happened lately because Patrick, the safety service director, has not been present during our meetings. So I don't have a big issue with this at all.
Well, the administration is a guest to this meeting. And if it's a hostile meeting, I don't have a problem with the administration not wanting to come as a guest. Mr. Gertz, Mr. Mel Gertz.
I don't have anything to add at this point.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Gertz, for your meeting. And we will make sure that both the response from Mr. Ross and your second response are in the minutes. I would like to have these things taken care of outside of this meeting and only information brought in, since we aren't getting questions answered here in the meeting. Let's just get the information before you come to the meeting. 2 weeks of time between meetings should allow you to get as much information as you need. If you work with your fellow councilmen, they'll get the information that you're looking for.
I'm tired of arguing.
Am I wrong there?
Yeah, you are wrong, because if I call the man 8 to 10, 12 times, or I send him emails and I get no response, how am I supposed to get these questions answered?
Is there a message you think you might be getting there?
Yeah, I'm getting the messages he don't like to hear, because there are questions that I'm complaining about that need to be attended to. I mean, I took
Then let one of your other council.
Let me finish. I'm going to protect my ward up in the PNC, former PNC property. I drove back there again the other night. It's deplorable. Now, he said they're working on putting it and securing it. They got to go further than securing it. I tell you, you could take somebody, accost them, take them back into that old building that used to be the Carlisle Chemical Building. Nobody looks in that building. That place is a disaster. It's an attractive nuisance. And I've been complaining about this for well over a year. That's just one issue.
Okay.
My ward.
Thank you, Mr. Gertz.
You're welcome.
Utilities, lands and buildings, Mr. Lindeman.
Thank you, Chris. I'm not sure where Mr. Gertz got the list of questions that he had, but I know that I have been approached by a couple of people asking me questions about recycling, since I kind of brought it up and was talking about going forward to putting it on the ballot. I've had conversations with Mr. Ross, and I've had conversations with Mr. Stevenson, but recycling is something that people have asked me questions about, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. And of course, I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. I find out that one of a question came to me and wanted to know why our conversion rate was so low. It's something like 8.4%. Come to find out, actually, it's even lower than that. It's 4.5%. And there's a couple of things here. Back in 2016, no application was submitted for any funds for the diversion rate that can be used for promoting recycling in the city. It's not a lot of money. In 2017, we received roughly $2,700. That's not a lot of money. But in 2018, we received $3,800, and in 2019, $3,700 plus dollars. So if you add those three years up, we could bought recycling bins for parks, so that people that have the aluminum cans or the plastic bottles, whatever, would have a place to put their recycling in the parks. But that money, it's kind of hard to find out where that money's spent. If Mr. Ross was here, I could ask him. In a roundabout way, I've found out that the money is diverted and it's pays part of the salaries for the people that work in the parks. To me, that's a little bit, I mean, it's my opinion, but I think it's a little bit of a shell game. You know, where's the money at for the recycling? Oh, it's in the parks under the, anyway. Back in last year, we didn't submit an application again. You know, remember me saying 2,600, 3,800, 3,700. Well, in 2016 and 2020, we didn't get anything. We didn't get anything because we didn't submit an application. I think it goes around back to what maybe Mr. Fishesher said. Maybe Patrick needs help. Because if he would have, I guarantee you, the employees here in Reading are they're top notch. You know, they're as good as anybody. If Patrick would say, okay, this so-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, I want you to take this on because at a certain time of year, I have to make a report, and the numbers are there. It's not difficult. You just have to look at them, fill out the paper, send it in, get the money. If he would designate that somebody else, we would have $3,800 last year. And maybe instead of just putting it in the general fund and calling it park workers' salaries, which I think is BS, maybe we would have actually done something towards recycling. Anyway, I was hoping to have some more information about putting the curbside recycling for the city of Reading on the ballot. I talked to Patrick, and he said that he would have it to me by last Friday. He said he had a conversation with Rumpke, and they have not responded. So Tuesday, I still don't have anything. We're one of 4 cities, four communities, I should say, that do not have curbside recycling. Sometimes I think the administration is living in 1950. I think we just need to move forward. And that is, unfortunately, that is all of my report, which is not anywhere near what my report was going to be if I had gotten the information that I asked for. And that's all my report.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Lindeman?
I had a question, maybe Dave Stevenson could answer for me. I talked to Don casually about this, and they were talking about circulating petitions to put this thing on the ballot. I know we need, I remember about 500 or 600 signatures. What is it, 10% of the last governor's election, Dave?
That's correct. The number of ballot signatures is actually less than that, but you want to get.
Well, my question is, could we not just prepare our own legislation as a council and have this issue put on the ballot directly by a vote of council, as long as we get it in?
If you put it on as a tax, you could do that. There's no provision where you just put on if your intent is to be mandatory, there's no provision in the law for you to do that.
I'm sorry, you broke up. I didn't hear that last part.
Tony, if you choose to put it on as a tax and provide a method to pay for it, yes, you can put it on the ballot in that manner. You can do what's called an advisory election, which is not binding on the council or anybody else. You can also put it on to put it on, you would have through the petition process, which is probably, assuming that you don't want to raise taxes to do it, but you want to make it mandatory. That's the only way you can do it.
Could you couch the payment for the like I think it's $3 a month now or something like that? Could you put that into legislation from council, which would be I guess you'd have to call it a tax then, would you not? And then say this will be applied strictly to recycling, and then be set up for, would that qualify as a form of recognizing a tax anyway? Because we do charge $3 now. I think that's what Rumpke charges, do they not?
Tony, what I think you would need to do is determine how much you need to pay for the program and ask the auditor to certify the millage that would cover that amount. And you put it on the increase in the property tax.
Well, Don, maybe you could explore that option. What's the deadline for putting something on the ballot like that? I thought it was all.
It's in early August. I don't know the exact date. I want to say it's the 4th, but I'm not sure.
Well,
I have explored that, Tony. That's what I'm waiting for. Patrick said he would have the information about what the cost would be, and he would consider every other week instead of every week. He said he's working with Rumpke to get that information, and yet so far we haven't gotten it back. Okay. And I agree. I think Dave told me that it was the 4th of August when you have to have these petitions in. you know, the longer we delay on how this is going to work and the more we put our, you know, at some point, it's just going to not be possible.
Well, I'd vote in favor of it if you put it on council as a proposed piece of voting legislation, or I mean, an act of voting in the fall election.
Dave, if you could give me some example of that, I'm not quite sure exactly how to put that together, but if you could help me out with that, I'd appreciate it.
Are you talking to me, Don?
Yes.
Call me.
Okay. Thank you.
You probably could call Rumpke. I bet they'd be more than happy to help you develop the legislation from other communities.
Yeah, the legislation is not difficult. It's the steps you have to go through to get it done before August 4th, which take a little bit of time. But again, that kind of stuff happens every year, and the auditor knows what to do. And all we're looking for is what kind of what you're asking for is, if it costs $1 million, and this is just a round figure, if it costs $1 million, how many mills do I have to put on the ballot to pay $1 million for 5 years? That's what you're asking, and that's easy enough to figure out.
Okay, thank you.
Is anybody else having a problem with feedback?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think people need to either mute themselves when they're not speaking, or they need to turn down their volume significantly.
That help?
Yeah, see, that's what I was just doing. I forgot I was muted. So, I mean, if you could just mute yourself when you're not speaking, that would probably help a lot.
Mr. Lindeman, I had a quick question. Can you give me your figures again on what we received in 2017, 18, and 19? I was having trouble hearing those figures of what we actually received, the money. Uh-oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Okay, I
There you go.
deleted all the bad words. I'll send it to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Zoning, Plan and Environment Chairman, Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Chris. I've started a new Facebook group, David Powell, Ward 1 City Councilman, Reading, Ohio, that I intend to use to better inform people about the business of council and my committee. I recently uploaded the agenda for the meeting and also the full text of the 2 ordinances we'll be reading. Hope to include information like that in the future so the people can know what we're going to be talking about and discussing before we actually do it. Also, I had a Mount Notre Dame parent reach out to me after a citizen confronted their daughter about taking up the quote private parking unquote on the street. Just a reminder to everyone, these are public streets and are therefore public parking spaces. If you have an issue, the proper way to handle it is to contact City Hall. That's all that I have this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Powell? Thank you, Mr. Powell. I'll get that website from you. I want to see what you put there, and maybe I can support it too. Laws and Contracts, Chairwoman, Ms. Edichico.
Thanks, Chris. I don't have a big report tonight. The only thing I really have to say is that Mr. Stevenson's working on the rental registration stuff for me, the form and the wording, and hopefully we can get that moving forward. And that's all I have for tonight.
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Edichico. Public Health and Safety. Oh, Don, Mr. Lindeman.
I just wondered, Katie, are you gonna bring that to council at whole at any time for input from other people?
For input from other council members, or?
Yes.
I mean, we can talk about it now. I've brought it up several times. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, just let me know.
All right, thank you.
You might want to just bring that up next time instead of Chico, and we'll go over it next time for a little longer time. Public Health and Safety Chairman, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. President. The statistics for May are in for the fire department. Tony, you need to mute your mic. You're the one that's echoing.
I'm not saying anything.
No, it's echoing through your thing. It keeps lighting
You
up.
know what? You know what would solve this if we were all in the council chamber, we wouldn't have any of these problems.
Yeah, I know. Let me finish my report. For the month of May, the fire department made 244 EMS responses, 30 fire responses, 11 of which were all calls, for a total of 274 responses, roughly 9 runs a day. For operations for the fire department, all personnel were SCBA mask fit tested. The spring surfacing of hydrants is complete and the yard signs have been retrieved and put away. Training wise, they had live fire training for all personnel at Cincinnati Fire Department over a 3-day period. Department driver training utilizing State Fire Marshal Simulator. In-service training included hose deployment, fire flows, pump operations, cutting torch operations, vent, enter, and search techniques, and bloodborne pathogens and allergy reactions. They had a joint fire training with Amberley on French Park and Amberley Green rescue response and patient movement from remote areas. They had 1 firehouse tour and multiple birthday parades and the Memorial Day parade. For police for the month of May, police department had 1,410 calls for service, 33 auto accidents, 258 total charges filed, with 188 of those being original charges. Citations issued, there were 24 to Arlington Heights Court, 8 to Hamilton County Court, 5 to Juvenile Court, and 127 to Reading Mayor's Court, for a total of 166 citations. For their operations, officers responded to Reading and Benson for a subject struck by a vehicle. During the investigation, it was found to be a known suspect. The investigation continues. Officers responded to Cooper Street for a drug overdose, and that suspect was cited for disorderly conduct. They responded for criminal damaging when a local windshield was busted out. Suspect developed and warrant signed on the same. They had a run to Lakeshore Drive for report of a stolen vehicle. The driver had left the keys in the vehicle. No suspect at this time. Suspect was arrested after officers found he had open warrants. While checking his vehicle, officers located a loaded 9mm handgun in the car. Officers responded to an overdose. Suspect found to have possession of bulk amounts of 2 types of drugs. He was arrested for the same and transported to the Justice Center. Officers responded to 7700 block of Reading Road to assist Cincinnati with 3 persons shot in a nightclub. Allwell Drive, suspect arrested for domestic violence after injuring his stepfather. Suspect found passed out behind the wheel on Thorn Ridge at Furman. He was arrested for OVI. The officers responded with the fire department for a car fire on 4th Street. During the investigation, it was found that the vehicle was tampered with. Suspect developed and arrested for the same. On the 23rd, officers responded to 9200 Reading Road for an auto accident. The hit skip vehicle was later located on Sanborn Drive. The driver was cited for the accident and leaving the scene. On the 24th, suspect cited after starting a fire near the building to stay warm. It was cold that day. On the 26th, suspect found inside a vehicle, admitted he was stealing it stealing change from the vehicle, and he was charged for the same. Detectives were involved in the SWAT call out on Old Avenue. Suspect was waving a gun. Search warrant was served after arrest of 2 suspects. All the weapons were found to be airsoft weapons. They served a search warrant for a security vehicle on a employee theft. They served the last suspect with a search warrant for the shooting at a lounge in 2020. The speed trailer will be back in service over the next week. Will be placed in different locations throughout the city. And for your records, or for a little heads up, National Night Out is slated for August 30th, or August 3rd, I'm sorry. Finally, I would like to thank council for passing the ordinance to purchase police cruisers at the last meeting. That's all I have, Chris.
Just a note.
Mr.
on,
Linden, go ahead.
Just a note on Mr. Lyken's letter. I know council knows that signing contracts with these other communities has not been a knee-jerk reaction. Chief Owens and his lieutenants have put many hours investigating exactly what they had to do and how it could be done and so on and so forth. So I'm very proud of voting to agree to these contracts, and I support the chief. Thank you, Randy, for explaining it so well.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Fish-Escher. Service Chairman, Mr. Olbrich.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not have a report for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, and then Recreation Chairman, Mr. Lynn.
Yes, I have a very quick report. The pool opens this Saturday. It'll open at noon and will stay open to 6. So on the weekends, it'll be noon to 6. During the week, it'll be open between 12 and 8. That is all I have for my report this week. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Any new business? Any business that should be brought up and placed into someone else's committee so that we can vote on it and make a motion, vote on it, and sign it? Okay, then we will go to reports of officials. Law Director, Mr. Stevenson.
Thanks, Chris. I don't have a formal report tonight, and I apologize to Katie for not getting that ordinance done sooner. So I'll have it before the next meeting.
Okay, that'll be timely to work in with her other efforts there to inform. Treasurer, Mr. Gertz.
Thanks, Chris. I sent out the.
Oh, the other Mr. Gertz had a quick question.
Yeah, Dave, you've heard anything from the Supreme Court concerning your arguments you made? Do you have any idea when that may come through on that pipeline business?
Tony, it's really hard to say, and I have not heard anything. It's usually several months. We argued it on March 31st. So it's usually several months after that. I would look forward sometime in August or September, but sometimes they come out quick, sometimes they don't.
Well, I heard a lot of compliments about your presentation, and I thought it was presumptuous, though, that the Duke went ahead and they're tearing up all over town. It's going to be ironic if it does turn out that you will win the case. I think that would be wonderful, but I seem like the deck has already been set, it seems like.
Well, Tony, I thank you for your observation, and I thank everybody else who's made that. But you have to understand, we asked the Supreme Court to stay construction on this pipeline when we filed our notice of appeal, and they refused to do that.
I know.
And that allows Duke to put their pipeline in. So that's where we're at.
Well, thank you for your service.
Okay, then I will go ahead and ask Mr. Mel Gertz to go ahead and give his report.
Thanks, Chris. Earlier this evening, I did send a copy of the May income tax receipt report out to everyone via email. I'll give an overview of the report. At this point, May was another good month. And as we know, the income tax filing had been extended, so that definitely helped. The last 2 months have been very good. And as you'll see here in a moment, we're pretty far ahead for this time of the year after the first 5 months. So now whether we can maintain that volume, I'm not sure at this point. It's kind of a month by month adventure, but let me give a quick summary of where what we did in May. Individual residence income taxes, we collected $223,682. So that was almost 175,000 more than we had taken in May of 2020. In total, year to date, we've taken in $725,639. We're running 70% ahead of where we were at this point last year, or $298,689. For business profits income taxes, we collected $60,812 this month, which was very good compared to last May. That was 38,000, almost 39,000 more than what we took in last May. Year to date, we've taken in $293,034. We're running 76.2% ahead of where we were at this point last year, which equates to $126,716. For payroll withholding income taxes, we collected $490,963. That was almost $38,000 more than what we took in last May. Year to date, we've taken in $2,886,171. So we're running 13.9% ahead in that category, payroll withholding income taxes, which equates to $352,875 ahead. So in total, for the month of May, we took in $775,456, which is $251,565 more than what we took in last May. So we're running 48% ahead for the month of May as compared to last year. Year to date, in total, we've collected $3,904,844. That's $778,280 more than we were at this point last year. So we're running almost 25% ahead of where we were after the first 5 months of 2020. So knock on wood, hopefully we can keep the momentum going. But like I said, it's kind of a month by month situation in terms of what's going on. So we'll see how the rest of the year pans out, but at least we've got a jump on the year, the first 5 months, and we've got a nice nice number that we are ahead of at this point in time. I do want to make one other comment too, and Patrick had made a comment in response to one of Tony's questions. I think it was question 10 about what are we going to do with any extra money we get from the federal government. Patrick had made a comment about, oh, I think we should definitely put in a new system that allows people to file their income taxes electronically. I don't know who he's talking to, but he hasn't mentioned a word to me about that. However, just so everyone knows, within my department, we've been talking about this for a couple of years. It just so happens that the company that we use for our software, when they initially released that electronic filing capability, it was garbage. Nobody was using it. They've gone through, totally reworked that system. It's gotten much, much better, and people are starting to adapt it and implement it across the state. So we are looking into that. I've had a couple of conversations with my team already about what does that look like? How much is it going to cost? We need to get some estimates for software. Are we going to need any additional hardware, network capability, etc.? So in the coming weeks in the council meeting, have some additional information about that particular capability. Mentioned the software has been really terrible until recently. So hopefully, maybe before the end of the year, we can get something implemented. But I'm going to need to get a council's approval to spend some money to make that happen. And it would make it a lot more convenient for our residents, et cetera. So that's all. That was just a quick update there. That's all I've got for tonight, unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I had a question, Mel. Or
Yeah,
just an
Mel?
observation.
Yeah, Mr. Gertz, go ahead.
The observation I was making, last year being with the COVID, I was kind of ignoring that, but I was looking back to 19 and 18, and we're doing quite well percentage-wise, even on those years, which I would seem to be recognized as in at least more normal period of time. I guess my question is there anything that you can address that would show why we're doing a lot better than we did actually in 19 and 18? You know, we were shooting for 5%, 4.5%, 3% growth, but we're doing quite well there. And then the other question I had, which I'll go on mute. I talked to Sabrina, not that I even agree with some of this in my philosophical political position, but I'm hearing a lot about stimulus coming down and whether or not stimulus is going to be sent out to all of the communities in the country. And I don't know how our grandchildren ever pay for it, but nevertheless, have you got any input or any information that relates to future possible stimulus monies that may be coming through from the federal government? Have you had any communication from any of your organizations or any other sources? But my observation of the previous 2 years and the stimulus, I don't know if you have anything you could add to that. Thank you.
Yep. From a stimulus standpoint, I've asked that question myself, to both Michelle and Shannon, because there are a lot of organizations that we're part of from a overall treasurer's perspective. And from what I can gather, nobody has heard of any specifics at all about what does the stimulus look like, who's going to get the stimulus, how much it might be, does it depend on the size of the community? I mean, we've heard literally nothing. Now, I don't know if Patrick has got anything that he's heard, but we haven't, not at our level. In our organizations that we deal with, the Treasurers Association, the Ohio Municipal League, that sort of thing, we haven't heard anything in particular. And you do make, in reference to your other observation, we are doing much better than we did in 2018 and 19 at this point in time. I mean, we're still significantly ahead of those numbers. And I've asked the same question to Michelle and Shannon, and it's like kind of all over the map. I mean, we have peaks in individual income taxes. We've been having some peaks with the payroll withholding taxes, with people with, companies giving out bonuses and that sort of thing. But there's nothing in particular that we can say, this is the reason that this number is much, much higher. It really is just so variable from month to month. I mean, because we have the same discussion every single month about, is there something specific that's going on that I can share with council and with the community in terms of, why are things either doing very well or doing very bad, either or. So, I mean, if we come across something, you'll know about it, because I'll report it here in these meetings. But at this juncture, I don't have any particular item to hang my hat on that says, this is why our number is so much better. It's kind of all over the map. So sorry, I can't be more specific. I wish I could.
I know at one point we were thinking that the building of the school and the jobs related to that was going to have an influence on our income. Is that got a percentage of this, or not this much?
No,
Okay.
not for this year. I mean, there was a small percentage when the school was under construction, but this year that has nothing to do with it. So
And they
I
took
mean,
all
the
that money
school's up
out of
and running.
payroll, right? So there wasn't a lot of individuals
I
that
don't-
were
I don't-
making money that ended up holding all that tax money until this spring.
No, there was, and there's certain rules about when you can charge people taxes and when you can't charge people taxes. You know, and to be honest with you, we were really digging into that a lot when the school was under construction. And they'd have people in there that were working less than 80 hours doing their work. Then they'd switch them out and bring somebody else in. And you can't collect taxes on that. There's got to be a minimum, I think it's, and I'd have to go back and look to be honest, but I thought it was a minimum of 120 or 160 hours or something that you had to work in a community before you can collect taxes from that individual. So yes, we did make some good additional income when the school was under construction. But for this year, it's really not had, little or no impact. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Gertz.
Hey, Mel,
Yeah,
Mel.
yes.
I've been kind of following House Bill 197. Now it's, I think, House Bill 157, dealing with the income tax rebates for people who worked from home during the pandemic. Do you see that as anything that's going to affect us down the road?
I mean, it's a possibility. And what Randy's talking about is there were people that are complaining, like if they were working at a company here in Reading and we were charging them taxes, and now they're working from home in Mason or Sharonville or someplace else. They didn't want to pay Reading taxes, but the court system in the state of Ohio upheld the ability for cities to continue to collect taxes from those individuals, just like we have in the past. Now, is that going to change in the future? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say at this point. Dave, I don't know if you know anything about that more than I do, but I think that it's kind of still tied up into the discussion in the court system and that sort of thing. So it's hard to, I don't have an answer for that one.
Well, the emergency orders are coming off today. I don't know what effect that'll have on the withholding. I would anticipate that there are some people who used to work in Reading who will no longer work in Reading as a result of restructuring that the companies will do. And at some point, we're not going to be able to withhold tax for them. I think that's going to happen. And I know I've had a conversation with both Michelle and Shannon regarding that. And frankly, they appear to be on top of it. So we'll know when we know, I guess, is
right, exactly
the true answer to it.
No, I agree with you. It's kind of up in the air right now. So we'll see how things progress. And when there is a final answer, then we can go back and make a determination and come back to council and the community with some estimates, hopefully, of here's what the impact may or may not be for the city based on that situation, however it ends up being worked out and agreed to.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gertz. We do not have
You're welcome.
Sabrina on, so we will go to reading of any resolutions.
Chris, before I do that, Patrick wanted me to read his responses so it could be part of the record.
Well, I think I would rather just go ahead and put it in the minutes. I don't want to go back to response being shared here in council. I'd rather see this taken care of in committee. So I do not want to go ahead and read the responses. I think everyone on council has had a chance, and everyone in the public will have a chance when the minutes come out.
Hey.
All right. Are there any resolutions?
No, sir.
Then we'll go to reading of ordinances.
An ordinance authorizing the auditor to pay the amount of $73,565.03 from the Streets and Curbs Fund for payment with respect to various improvement loans and declaring an emergency.
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion made by
Second.
Mr. Gertz, seconded by Mr. Albrecht. To suspend the rule, it requires a second and third reading. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mr. Fischesser,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
That motion passed.
Motion to
Motion
adopt.
to adopt. Second.
Motion made by Ms. Edichico, seconded by Mr. Lindeman to adopt the ordinance. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mr. Fischesser,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted and the ordinance number
2021-20. An ordinance directing the Safety Service Director to secure bids for the permanent underground relocation of utilities previously installed overhead in the vicinity of Bolser Drive and Columbia Avenue in order to achieve compliance with zoning requirements of PDD number 2, the Reading Community Schools Plan Development District, and declaring an emergency.
Discussion?
Pardon me, Katie?
Ask for discussion?
Discussion, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions about this because it's my understanding that the administration has already been meeting with the school about this and that the ball's already rolling to get these poles buried. I talked to Pat about this and got some answers earlier today, kind of confirming what I had suspected, that our previous ordinance that we had approved a few months ago already allowed Patrick to enter into the agreement with the school to get this taken care of. And also that any projects under 50,000 do not require competitive bids. I'm also wondering if this ordinance is really necessary, if those two are correct, and also why we're including extra poles that weren't even originally included in the original PDD.
I can respond if you'd like.
Go ahead, Mr. Gertz.
Number one, there was no deadline in any of that previous ordinance, and I have no knowledge that this is occurring. I wish, like Mr. Lindeman said, if the law or the safety service director would communicate a timetable and had given us all that information, maybe we wouldn't be where we are here. I have talked to other professionals in this area. And what I'm suggesting is not to do anything different than what we're trying to accomplish. Mr. Fischesser, as he stated, he wants to move on. The council voted for the money, the 25,000. We don't know that it'll be under a total of $50,000. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think there's no harm in getting competitive bidding and to have these alternates, which would ultimately put the, at least find out what the cost would be. And then council, the way this ordinance is designed, would give the council the right to make a decision whether to make it more aesthetically positive, to put the, by the way, it would be the electric lines, the poles will be gone. Underneath Columbia Avenue, the city would then make an elective choice to then go to a pole on the opposite side of the school's property. I believe it's the west side. I forgot myself. And then have it installed underground and then put it on a riser pole across the street. that would eliminate any need. And one of the arguments that was made is we needed a pole for crosswalks at Balser Drive. We do not need a electric pole for a crosswalk sign. We have crosswalk signs in numerous places in the city. We have an electrified one found by the library that doesn't have a riser pole. It's built in a manner that you can do it without that. A riser pole, you don't have to be connected at the top. And it also leaves open the possibility, in talking to a couple of the professional people that I have talked to, the original easement, if you could install 3 conduits straight from that one pole that sits at the back portion of the first house on Balser, adjacent to the school, and go directly through and under, or not through, but underneath of the parking lot. You would not have to tear up anything. And it's a more direct shot, and it might even be less expensive. So getting alternate bids and requiring them to get alternate bids, I think is certainly a positive. That doesn't cost anything extra, and it does put a timetable in here. We'll find out by July 15th under this ordinance, if I remember correctly, to at least get the bids in hand. And then, of course, if the council elects not to go forward with any alternate proposal, then that's the prerogative of council. But it's going to see that this gets done timely. Mr. Dwayne Mounts, who lives across the street on Balser, and in the litigation, I did a little investigation to this, was under the hope that that would be that pole that sits on the riser pole that would sit on Balser and Columbia Avenue, actually has a guy wire that has to protect it to bring it down, and that'll be in the PDD, which would be a violation of the PDD in and of itself. So I think it's worthwhile to, put the feet to the fire. This is the first I've ever been told that they already got bids or things that are taking place. There's been no communication to my knowledge, and you are the only councilman, I guess, I know that has that information, unless everybody else does. I don't. But I don't see any harm in passing this ordinance and pushing it forward, and know it's going to get done. I want to get this finished before starting. I don't want to have it all torn up. If you'll recall, if we had bid the poles in the fall, when did school start? I'm trying to remember now, was it at 20? If we'd have bid the poles in the fall of 19 instead of the spring of 20, we wouldn't have had to wait around for the poles to be delivered, and we'd have had all of that electrical system installed. And that's another one of those things that frustrates me about this. So this puts some meat on the bones. It gets it accomplished. It requires timetables to be met. I see no real harm in this ordinance, and it wasn't intended to be harmful to anybody else, but to just see that the job gets done. Thank you. I don't know if that answers your questions, but that was my attempt to.
Anyone else have
I've got a few
discussion? Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, I've got a few comments. I do know that I've spoken to Patrick about it, and he has secured bids. It's been awarded to AMS.
Randy, looks like it might have froze up on you. Mr. Fishesher, if you can call in, you might be able to unfreeze yourself there. Looks like that's what he's doing. Give him 30 seconds to come back on here. I think Randy was going to be reading from a document that he turned over and sent out. I have a copy of that. I could read what he has here.
When did you receive that, Mr. President?
I'd have to go and look at my emails here. That would have been That was 4:09 today. Looks like Randy's getting back on though. Randy, you there?
There he is. He's just connecting. Yeah, he sent it to myself and to Chris. He always sends his reports to myself and Chris before the meeting.
Randy, you're on mute right now. If you want to come off of mute and continue.
Yeah, sorry about that. My iPad decided to reset itself in the middle of our meeting here. Couple of the tones are echoing on me again here. As I said, this has been awarded to AMS. Couple things that I found questionable in the ordinance was in the third whereas, it states this lingering dispute has been a source of discord. To my knowledge, there is no lingering dispute once the agreement was reached. The 4 months since agreement is due in part because the school being in session and the closing of Hunt Road, which was detouring traffic over Balser Drive. Today, the guy was supposed to get back with Patrick on when he thought this was going to happen. I don't think he has, because I would have heard back. In the fourth whereas, it states that this prompt completion is essential to restoring harmonious relations between the school and council. To me, this ordinance will do nothing more than open up past wounds once again and drive a wedge between the two groups. Because, whether we like it or not, any changes, and I will say up front that I did talk to Joe Braun, our attorney, and send him a copy of this ordinance because I wanted to get his feel on it. And any changes to the agreement that we have with the school will require the school to come back and have to re-sign another contract, which I don't think they'll do. Section 3 requires that it be submitted by July 15th, and Section 4, it should be sent to council by July 18th, and we have 7 days to talk about it. The prompt completion is essential. This does nothing more than delay the process even longer, because once it's awarded, then we have to go back and get it scheduled and completed, which means that we'll get bumped down farther on the underground company's list of places to go. Section 5 states that should the alternate bid be accepted, then council agrees to pay any additional expenses. I got to voice my opinion. This is a waste of taxpayer money, not to mention the fact that crosswalk signs, whether it's beep poles or the solar units or whatever, do cost money also, and those will need to be installed. And in the end, I just feel the ordinance should be permanently tabled since the agreed upon contract works. Has already been awarded, and any changes now would do nothing but further open wounds and delay the project. And that's my feelings on it.
Chris, you're on mute.
Can I respond to that? Then Mr. Fishester, talk about wasting taxpayers' money. The council voted $25,000. I voted against that, not because I have any animosity with the school or anything else. I just think if they made a contract to do what they were supposed to do, you just wanted to get it over with, is what your comment was, I think. And we voted to pay the $25,000. That battle's over. You won that battle. I don't know what the cost would be, but I have talked to a couple different people that are working the field. I'm estimating no more than $8,000 or $10,000 to put it in a way that would be more aesthetically attractive to the residents and to the community. I'm not suggesting that we have to put in crosswalk signs that are electrified. I don't know that that's necessary. We have other crosswalks all over Reading that can be put up with a simplified crosswalk on a typical signpost and paint the crosswalk with greater hash marks. We don't need something with that overhang. That was a sign that was manufactured by our own electric department when we had one some 30 years ago or whenever it was, 40 years ago. I think this puts some teeth in it. I don't think it causes any more friction with the school at all. I just think that it shows that we're trying to get this accomplished. And what I have investigated with I can't say I know a lot of depth in it, but I don't know that the one that's supposed to be the recommended contractor is necessarily the best. I'd like to see the bids then. We could have our first reading tonight, and then Mr. Ross could provide us all with all the data that seems to be delivered to Mrs. Edichico and to you. Maybe all the rest of the council members got them. I didn't. I'd like to see all of the records that they have and what they've been cited and what we have the city's goals are. And if that bidder I'm sure he'd like to make some extra money. I mean, you can extend a contract to put underground of Columbia Avenue as well. So at least I think we have, I mean, I'd suspend the rules and move on it tonight, but if you want to have a first reading and then have Mr. Ross provide us all with the details of when this is going to occur and how soon it's going to be accomplished and what those estimates are and what the project's going to be, I think we're entitled to know that.
Ms. Edichico, did you have something? No. Anyone else? Any motions? Mr. Lindeman.
Sure, if he wants to have a first reading, that's fine. I'm surprised and pleasantly surprised that the Safety Service Director has information that's going to be helpful for council. So if he can bring that to the next meeting, that'd be great, or send it out before the next meeting. That sounds like a win-win.
I agree.
Okay, no other comments from anyone? With that, we'll go ahead and make this a first reading. Okay, any other business?
I had a question. I don't know whether council made a final decision. I do know that ordinance says we'll go back to the council chambers by July, but the governor's lifted that as of tomorrow, I think is the official date. But have we also voted that we're not going to have caucuses, just going to have first and third, or has that been decided?
I think Ms. Edichico was talking about an ordinance that she might be preparing with Mr. Fischescher to go to just 2 times a month. Tony, I'm getting a lot of feedback. You're the only one with a mic on.
I'd like to know if we're going to have a committee meeting on that, Mrs. Edichico.
We can. I had just brought up at the last meeting how I don't have my notes in front of me, but that section in our ordinance states that it is the first and third Thursday of the month that council meetings take place. And
Tuesday.
I'm sorry, Tuesdays. The only difference was it had 8 p.m. and not 7:30, which we all agreed to continue with 7:30. And I believe the general consensus was everyone seemed good with the twice a month meetings, or
yeah, that was overwhelming.
Yeah.
First and third Tuesdays.
And just if we all agreed that the time would be 7:30.
Okay, I would like to go ahead and unless there's any objection, state that the next council meeting will be on June 15th, and it'll be a Zoom meeting, council. All in favor?
Aye.
All against?
No, I'm against it. I think it ought to be in the chambers at least.
Anyone else? I
Aye.
got 3-1.
Aye.
Aye for Chambers or aye for Zoom?
Oh, aye of Zoom.
Zoom, okay. That'd be 4-1. That's, that'll carry the objection. So the next meeting will be September 15th on the Zoom meeting at 7:30. Any other comments? Then this meeting
Yeah,
is
I
adjourned.
do have one.
July 15th.
Whoa.
You said
6:15. 6:15,
Hold on.
June 15th.
I would like to,
Sorry.
See
Go
you
Go ahead,
guys.
Mr. Lynn.
I would just like to close. Tony, I think the feedback is coming back from your mic. I just want to thank everybody who took part in the Memorial Day Parade. I was very happy to see that back. Again, it's a big tradition of Reading. The VYO Festival, I think Bonnie put great work into that and the VYO team. So I appreciate everybody that spent a lot of time down there and a lot of hours with that festival. So it's just great to see things get back to normal. And I hope to get back to city council sometime and get back to normal also. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? I think that's a unanimous
I think Randy had
endorsement.
something.
Pardon me?
I think Randy had
No,
something.
no, I'm. good.
All right, then,
Basically, Tom kind of stole my thunder there. I was gonna say how, I was gonna say how nice, the whole city looked. I did not get to the parade, but, going down to the festival, it was great to see a bunch of people out having fun and overall the people that took care of it, the service department, did an excellent job cleaning the city up and getting the flags up and everything. And they should be commended for that also. Parks Department, they did a great job too.
All right. Well, then with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you for coming this evening. See you in 2 weeks.
See you guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.